How are you guys doing on this Wednesday? Just what I needed to go with my lunch. Nice. This little thing that I'm trying to learn how to play, it's from the game Chrono Cross, the sequel to Chrono Trigger. I think it's amazing how some of the most beautiful music is out of video games. The Last of Us soundtrack would be fitting. Are you saying that because of the pandemic? Or because Halloween's coming up? Oh, is it more acoustic? Jordy says, was just having a conversation with my girlfriend about the new Doom soundtrack. That's probably just like a lot of metal, right? Doom is just heavy. Oh my goodness. Am I a fan of Kirby? I'm familiar with Kirby, but I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan. Dude, I used to play a little death metal. Oh my god. If you remind me at the end of class, I'll play some for you. Well, I'll bring up an old recording. You won't believe it. You won't even believe it. You'll be like, dude, I didn't know you shredded so hard. Oh, that makes me want to listen to The Last of Us. I'm going to look that up after class. Thank you for letting me know about that. Any soundtrack with some banjo, I'm game. Yeah, if you guys remind me at the end of class, I'll dig up some tracks from back in the day, from the depths of the pit. It's just gonna melt your face. Oh, that's funny. My brother Nathan, he would do some of the vocals. So I would do vocals with Nathan. And if you're familiar with death metal, it's just like guttural grounding. It's just gonna melt your face. Was that how I delivered it? Yeah, it's legal. It's legal to melt the face. It's definitely okay. Okay. Are you guys ready to get started? I think this will be kind of fun today because we're going to dig into the parameters for a 747. In the second example we do, that's what we're going to do. Okay. Let's get down to brass tacks. So in this lecture, we analyze the longitudinal dynamics of some real aircraft. We're going to dig into some numbers. We will introduce the phugoid and short period mode. So these are the two modes of longitudinal dynamics, and we'll introduce those a little bit, tell you what they are. So let's get into it. Okay, we're just going right into an example. And last class we talked about stability derivatives, specifically stability derivatives for longitudinal dynamics. And so I want to use some of the expressions we derived and get stability derivatives for an F4 Phantom. We're going to get these two stability derivatives in this example. This is an F4 Phantom right here. I think a lot of countries use this aircraft in their Air Force. It's not just limited to the States. I did like a quick little Wikipedia scan and it was like, holy cow, a lot of people. This is a popular aircraft. So that's what we're looking at here. And let's assume that it's cruising at Mach 0.9. Japan just retired the last of theirs earlier this year. Okay, cool. So maybe they're being phased out. But yeah, from the US, Japan, there were some Middle Eastern countries. So it's going to be cruising at Mach 0.9. And we haven't talked about the Mach number yet, so we'll introduce that. And we're at a height of 35,000 feet, which is a pretty common cruising altitude. Now, today we're going to be assuming the longitudinal reference flight condition. Maybe like the standard. In this reference flight condition, it's the ones we've been using the previous couple notes, and it's just flying straight with constant velocity at some constant altitude. So the aircraft isn't turning or anything. It's just, boom, I'm going straight. That's the reference flight condition. So nothing too complex about that. So what does it mean to be flying Mach 0.9? So I'm going to use like this scripty kind of M for the Mach number to distinguish it from the other capital M that we use, which is the pitching moment. So this is the way we'll tell them apart. But the Mach number is as simple as this. It's the velocity of the aircraft divided by the speed of sound. So if the Mach number is 1, that means that you are traveling at the speed of sound. Okay, so we'll use lowercase a. Now, the speed of sound changes with altitude as well. As you get higher up, as your altitude increases, the speed of sound gets a little bit slower. Do I have a... Let's pull this up really quick. I found this little table earlier. Okay, so we have the altitude over here. We got sea level. The speed of sound is 761 miles per hour. But as you go up higher, it kind of levels out at around 660 miles per hour. So we're cruising at 35,000 feet. So we got 660.7 miles per hour, the speed of sound. Isn't there a Coldplay song about that? Something at the speed of sound. Get to the other side. I think that's exactly it, what I just said. Okay, so at 35,000 feet, the speed of sound is like... It rang a bell. Yeah, it probably sounds exactly like that if you pull up the album. So we're 973 feet per second. So our velocity, if we're going Mach, I already forgot what it was, Mach 0.9. We can solve for the velocity from this expression. It's going to be Mach number times the speed of sound. That's going to be 0.9 times 973 feet per second. We're using English units today. We're not even going to use meters. And I think English units are pretty popular in aircraft dynamics. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. I kind of wish everything was metric. Okay, so our velocity is 876 feet per second. Freedom units. That's right, we got an election coming up, so we should just really ring the bell of freedom and use these English units. At this flight condition, our side velocity is 0. We don't have any angle of attack. We're just flying like totally level. So this velocity, it's all going to be in the U direction. In other words, we know that the body X basis vector points out the nose of the aircraft. All the velocity is going to be in that direction. We don't have any side. So U star, we're going to say it's 876 feet per second. All right. Let's get the mass here. Well, we have a couple more parameters here. So this aircraft weighs 39,000 pounds. The plane form area is 530 square feet squares. Yes, alpha is going to be 0. You're absolutely correct. And because we're at constant altitude, so alpha is going to be 0, our angle of attack. At constant altitude, this is also equal to our pitch angle. So we're going to be assuming both of these things. Let's assume that. Okay, 530 feet squared. Which, I don't know, I was looking at this and I was like, I'm kind of surprised that the area projected here. So it's 530 feet squared, but that's the correct figure. I double checked it. It just, I don't know. It almost seems like too much. And the air density at this altitude is 0.74 times 10 to the minus 3 slug. We're doing English units today. Slug per cubic foot. And we're gonna take a second to talk about what a slug is. But we'll keep going. Well, look how tiny the person inside is for scale. Let's see. Oh, actually, that's a good point. I thought like this whole thing was the person, but if you look really careful, like their head is just that. So they're pretty small in there. The later ones were two-seaters as well. Schrechtenwald says, wait, doesn't alpha have to be greater than 0 to overcome the weight? Now, you're right, and I was thinking about this a little bit the other day, but this alpha equals 0 is just our... How do I say that? Well, okay, it's our linearization point. Actually, no, that's not a good argument either. I see what you're saying, because like lift, we know that lift has to counteract the weight, and we can take the coefficient of lift times the angle of attack. That's like a standard linear representation of the lift force. And so you're saying if alpha is 0, don't some airfoils generate lift even at alpha equals 0? Non-symmetric and or inclined airfoils. Okay, I'm gonna defer to crispy brownies and how a mia senor. For some airfoils, it can generate some lift when the angle of attack is 0. We're gonna keep running with it, but no matter what, this angle of attack being 0 is the most, yeah, crispy to the rescue, but it is the most standard longitudinal flight condition. And Schrechtenwald, I've asked myself that same question, and other than what Crispy Brownies said, I don't have the best explanation for that, to be very honest with you. Okay, so the purpose of this example is to calculate this stability derivative for this real aircraft, just to put some numbers to it. And last time we derived this expression. So let's put it to work. This Q is the dynamic pressure, which is 1/2 times the air density times the velocity squared, but because we just have that longitudinal component, it's just U. All right, let's just plug in some numbers. 1/2, okay, this is the air density, times 10 to the minus 3 slug per cubic foot. And then we're multiplying this by our velocity. And if you multiply that all out, you get 283 slug times 1/feet times second squared. And we're going to come back to this in a second because I want to simplify this a little more. But we have to talk about what the heck a slug is. So let's do that. Slug. You're talking about this little creepy crawly? No. No, I'm not. Okay, let's talk about some English units here. 1 pound force is equal to 1 pound mass times 32.2 feet per second squared, where, as you probably know, this is gravitational acceleration in English units. I know we're used to the 9.81 meters per second squared, but you could also do it in feet per second squared. Let's write another expression for the pound, but this one's going to involve slugs. It's equal to 1 slug times 1 foot per second squared. So why do we even have the slug? I think it's kind of similar to, or I wanted to bracket this whole guy. This is actually similar to SI units, where we have 1 Newton is equal to 1 kilogram times 1 meter per second squared, right? So this pound force being equal to 1 slug times 1 foot per second squared is kind of analogous. Now, if you combine 1 and 2, this gives you the relationship between a slug and a pound mass. So 1 slug is 32.2 pound mass. But what I want to use up above, if you take the second equation, you can say that 1 slug is 1 pound force divided by 1 foot per second squared. So let's use this up here. So this is 283 pounds these second squares, they're going to cancel. So you're going to get 283 pounds per square foot. Is psi in pound force? Wait, psi is the heading angle. Or wait, sorry. I'm thinking of road vehicle dynamics. PSI? Oh, you... Okay. okay, gotcha. PSI should be pound force. Pound force. Yeah, you're right. So many variables flying around. Okay. Let's get the mass of this aircraft in slugs. Interesting, I've been wrong all my life. Hey. But now you've seen the light. Wait, what did you think? Did you think it was, what units did you think it was in? Now I'm curious. Oh, pound mass. No. PSI, because that's pressure is a force over an area, so you got to do pound force. Okay. Watch, I'll be wrong. I don't think so. Wait, so when you measure yourself on a scale, is that pound force or pound mass? That's pound force. I know Fridays it's tricky, but yeah, when you read on the scale, that's going to be giving you pound force, which is also equal to slugs. So you could say I weigh 180 slugs, because 1 pound force is 1 slug times foot per second squared. So I can lose weight by changing the units. Yes, you can. It's the easiest way to lose weight. Okay. We got to divide by 32.2 feet per second squared. And this is going to give us 1,200 slugs. What is an example of something in pound mass? I don't have an example. I don't have a good example. Time to gain 32.2 times my body weight. Okay, we need to... Does scale tell me pound force? Yeah, scale measures force, so it's actually sensing pound force or kilogram force. Ask engineers on Reddit. Everyone raise S's for the best pound mass. No, you can't win. Technically measuring pound Morse. Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, your scale tells you pound force. Okay. So let's get back to this stability derivative here. We have this expression. Now, these coefficients, the coefficient of drag and the partial derivative of drag with respect to your airspeed, these you find in tables. So eventually for flight dynamics, a lot of stuff is tabulated and we're just going to be looking stuff up. In fact, that's what we're going to do with the Boeing that we're going to get to in the second example. Okay, so let's just plug some stuff in. 283, so I'm putting in the dynamic pressure, so pound force per foot squared. And then our plane form area is 530 square feet. We're going to divide by our mass, which was 1,200 slugs. And then we're multiplying that by our velocity, 876 feet per second. And then we're multiplying by these coefficients over here. So that's just going to be 2 times our coefficient of drag. And then, if you multiply all this out, you get minus 0.0058 1 over slug pound force. And I wonder where the name slug came from. Okay, this pound force over foot per second. This is slug times seconds to the minus 1. So that would allow me to cancel this slug here. Cancel out that slug, man. Cancel out that slug, bro. And then we're going to have seconds to the minus 1. So this is the XU stability derivative for an F4 Phantom. In case you were ever curious. Now this other stability derivative that we wanted to get, Z sub U, this expression, we didn't derive directly, but you can also find this expression in a table. This is from the Nelson textbook. And I think I put a portion of this table in our last set of notes. But this stability derivative works out the same way. You just plug in everything. And we would get minus 0.0283 seconds to the minus 1. I was trying to fly one the other day, but the XU light kept coming on. I think you're making that up. Okay. Guys, let's talk about a Boeing. And just a reminder, like, where do these stability derivatives go? Like, what's the point? Like, if I have this number, what the heck do I do with it? I'm going to scroll ahead a little bit here because I want to remind you of something, which is we have these longitudinal perturbation dynamics that we derived. So this state space model describes the dynamics of an aircraft about this level longitudinal flying condition. And you see the stability derivatives get plugged into this matrix. And that's going to affect the dynamics. And we're going to dissect that in detail for the 747. But if you're wondering, like, okay, we got this number, what the heck do I do with it? Well, you're going to plug it into this matrix and then proceed from there. Okay, so let's get into the 747. So this is the condition we're looking at. So the standard longitudinal reference flight condition, just going straight, and it's cruising at 40,000 feet, Mach 0.8. So we're going to keep practicing the Mach number to get used to it. Another word for slug is a G-pound. What? Oh, I guess that makes sense because it's a pound multiplied by G. 32.2, right? Okay, that makes sense. A G-pound. You take a pound mass multiplied by G, or a pound mass multiplied by G creates a slug. Okay, here's a 747 little schematic with our body axes superimposed. So you can see this is the CG location, and in the side as well as top plane. And let's look at some of these parameters. This is kind of interesting. Look how heavy that thing is. This is pound force, by the way. I took this from a textbook called Dynamics of Flight, Etkin and Reed. And that's where I found it. Now this is a much larger aircraft. Look at this planeform area, 5,500 square feet. So that's 10 times the wing area of the F4 that we were looking at. You have the wingspan here, so almost 200 feet tip to tip. The mean chord, 27 feet. Wait a second here. You know, so this is the chord. And you see the chord is different. It's thicker towards the fuselage. But this is saying that the mean, like if you average the chord over from tip to tip, on average it's 27 feet. That almost seems too much. But I guess it tapers a lot towards the end, and that's a lot. Okay. So we have inertia properties. We have the air density at 40,000 feet, and we have the coefficient of drag at our current operating conditions. So that depends on your current speed. Wait, this already did the work of calculating our speed from the Mach number at altitude. Okay. And this is also assuming that the pitch angle is 0. So because we're going at constant altitude, this also means that the angle of attack is 0 once again. So we're going to need to use these parameters to calculate stability derivatives to populate this matrix. So this matrix, I've been calling it A sub L for longitudinal dynamics. And then these are our perturbation state derivatives. So I call it like delta X sub L. And this is just delta X sub L. So I'm looking, homogeneous means that you're ignoring control inputs to the system right now. So in other words, I just want to look at the A matrix because this is what determines the stability, the transient dynamics of the aircraft. So we're gonna derive this matrix today and take a look-see at what it means. Now, okay, this is gonna give us a head start on getting the stability derivatives. This table gives the dimensional derivatives for a 747. A dimensional derivative is not a stability derivative, but it's close. So how do you read this table? So let's look at this element right here. You match up the row and the column. And so this is the partial of x with respect to the u airspeed or velocity evaluated at our reference flight condition. So this table, the numbers in this table would change depending on your Mach number, depending on your altitude. But these dimensional derivatives, these are literally just the partials. So like this element down here, well, it's dm dw dot evaluated at the reference flight condition specified above. So this is just going to give us a head start. These are very close to what the stability derivatives are. Okay, so we'll get to this. Let us calculate the mass of a Boeing 747 in slugs or G-pounds. Oops. 32.2 feet per second squared. This is almost 20,000 slugs. $19,771 slug. Okay. Okay, here we go. So, okay, let's get our first stability derivative here. So the stability derivative x sub u, we can use the expression up here. We can. However, more generally, x sub u is equal to 1 over m times the partial of x with respect to u evaluated at the reference flight condition. Okay, so because we're given these partials already in the table, all I need to do is take that number from the table, divide it by the mass, and then I'll get the stability derivative. And so I don't have to, in this case, I don't need to use this other more detailed expression. So let's go back down here. So xu, it's going to be 1 over m dx du evaluated at the reference flight condition. So I have the mass, 19,771 slug. And then I multiply it by this entry up here in the table. So that's dx du. So what is that? It's multiplied by 10 squared, so that's minus 135.8 pounds, pound force, divided by feet per second. And this simplifies to minus 0.006868 seconds to the minus 1. And we're going to do a couple of these. Remember, the goal is to populate everything in this matrix. And so we got to calculate quite a few of these stability derivatives. But it's worth it to figure out how the heck a Boeing works. So all of these are going to be the same with that. Divide by slugs. And then I need to multiply by this partial. So dx dw, it's positive 275.8. If you multiply that out, 0.01395 seconds to the minus 1. What's this next one? Okay, this one I'm just going to give you the number for because it's calculated this way. It looks very similar to the above two stability derivatives. It's just with respect to z. So this is minus 0.08993 seconds to the minus 1. Gotcha. ZW. Let's get this stability derivative. Minus 0.3130 seconds minus 1. Now we're going to get into the pitching moment stability derivatives. So stability derivatives with respect to m. Now this is a little different because we don't divide by mass. We divide by the inertia about the y-axis. But we still take the partial with respect to u, evaluate it at the reference flight condition. And this, let's just give the number. Because you do this the same way. You go back up to the table. You find the inertia. Wait, actually, let's write this one out. Because the inertia is massive. It's kind of interesting to see. 0.331 times 10 to the 8th slug times feet squared. It's interesting that this is just such a massive structure. And yep, it flies. It flies. Okay, negative 35,150. So this is the dimensional derivative. And it's foot-pounds divided by feet per second. So like the pitching moment, this is the unit for a moment, right? A force acting over a distance, pound force acting over a foot, and then we're differentiating it with respect to a speed. So that's why it's divided by feet per second. So when you multiply this out, what do we get? You get minus 0.0011 feet to the minus 1 times second to the minus 1. And you can figure out these units that I'm putting here by converting slug to in terms of pound force and square feet. And then you can cancel things out, and it just turns out to be this way. Okay. MW. So that's the same inertia. Now it's the partial with respect to W. And I'm just going to give you the number for this one. Oh, wait, I did the wrong number for the last one. The number for this one is supposed to be minus 0.0011. We're gonna have to change the one right up above here though, because I gave you the wrong number. This number up here is actually smaller, and it's a positive number. 1.082 times 10 to the minus 4. Okay, we have two more stability derivatives to calculate, and then we get to start combining things and building this matrix to do some interesting analysis. Okay, so m sub q, 1 over this inertia times dm dq, evaluated at the reference flight condition. If the partial is negative, how is mu positive? Did I miss something? Oh! Oh, you guys, you know what I did? Because I stole this thing from this one, and I also stole this thing from this one. I'm glad you mentioned that, because this number is wrong. Sorry. That's supposed to be 3,581. When you do the math for this one, that's when you have the minus 35,000. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay. MQ minus 0.339. This one's just in units of seconds to the minus 1. And then we got our last one. M with respect to W dot. 1 over IYY dm dw dot at the reference flight condition. This is going to be minus 1.1560 times 10 to the minus 4th feet to the minus 1. All right. So those are all of the stability derivatives we need to fill in the matrix up above. Let's go to that matrix real quick. And you're going to see for this third row, you need some combinations of stability derivatives. So we're just going to fill those in right here real quick. If you multiply this stuff out, so these are all quantities from that third row. So this is 1.186 feet to the minus 1, second minus 1. This one is minus 0.00106, also feet minus 1, second minus 1. And then this last one is minus 0.4285, and that's just seconds minus 1. And now we get to build the matrix. And I just filled in the numbers here. So this is the longitudinal system matrix for a Boeing 747. Now, the first thing you do to analyze this system is you calculate the eigenvalues of this matrix. Let's do it in MATLAB. So I made a little code here. The weight. Okay, we get the mass. I have the speed. And then I have all of those stability derivatives that we calculated. I just threw them in here. And then I built my A matrix. So I'm going to run this. Wait, let's bring this over a little bit. Let's not show so many decimals either. Yeah, that makes it a little easier to look at. Okay, so in MATLAB, you guys all know, to calculate the eigenvalues, you just use the eig command. And boom, this is what we get. And I want to spend the rest of the class talking about these eigenvalues because they're important and they tell you a lot about what the aircraft actually does. Let's go back here. We got the eigenvalues. I'll call these alpha 1, 2, and wait, this is a lambda. Lambda 1, 2, and lambda 3, 4. So one pair of eigenvalues was minus 0.003316 plus or minus 0.06684 I. Then the other pair was minus 0.3709 plus or minus 0.9039 I. And what I want to do to visualize these a little bit is draw them in the complex plane. And we won't draw this exactly to scale because these numbers are really vastly different from each other. But let's draw lambda 1 and 2 first. So it has a very small negative real part. And it also has a small imaginary part. And I'm going to draw this pair. So it's close to the origin is the idea that you want to get. This other pair of roots, the real part is what? Is that 100 times the magnitude of the real part? I'm bad at that kind of math in my head. Or is it 1,000 times? I think it's like 1,000. I don't know. I'm embarrassing myself. Okay, and then the imaginary part here is also like 10 times bigger. 2 orders of magnitude, right? And this is like 1 order of magnitude bigger. So the lambda 3 and 4, this isn't exactly to scale, but I mean, those other roots are like out here. So let's put lambda 1 and 2. And now if you take any kind of standard fixed wing aircraft and you calculate the longitudinal dynamics like we did for the 747, like if we went back and did this for the F4, you tend to find roots that look along this pattern. You get one pair of roots that's really close to the origin, imaginary, and then you get another pair of imaginary roots that's farther in the left half plane, and it has a higher magnitude imaginary part. And that's why we give these special names. So this one that's close to the origin, we call this the phugoid mode. And then this other one, way out here, we call it the short period mode. always negative for both in the real. I want to say always, but it's not always going to be true because I know. Well, I don't want to give it away yet because we'll analyze these. But okay, short answer is I think some aircraft. No. I think you always will. Some aircraft on their own, they're naturally unstable, meaning it wants to basically crash into the ground if you leave it to its own devices. But then we operate or we add a control system to that aircraft that then stabilizes it. So after an aircraft has a control system, I think it'll always look something like this, even if it might naturally be unstable. So I will say always negative for both in the real part. Negative real implies physical stability. Yes, so let's talk about this. We're going to compare and contrast these routes, and we're going to look at what it means about the physics of the Boeing. Okay, so these pairs of routes, they are both... Oops. Well, this one's more obvious. Complex conjugate routes. All that means is it has a real part and an imaginary part. And complex conjugate routes always come in pairs symmetrical about the real axis. So these are always the same distance from the real axis. It's like a mirror image. Okay. So they're both complex conjugate routes, and we're going to get into that a little bit because that you get a lot of information from that. But the first thing, stable. What does it mean to be stable? I'm going to ask you guys to throw that in the chat. And when you put your answer, it has to be correct. I'll pick it apart if it's not perfect. Okay, negative real implies physical... Oh, wait, did you already say that? I'm rereading a comment from earlier. What does it mean to be stable? See, how should I say this? Every real part, or wait. The real part of every route must be negative. Dilly says, if the system receives an input, that means it will oscillate for a bit before returning to its original state. Good. That's good. That is an intuitive physical explanation. And that's what an aircraft will do. Okay. The real part of every route must be negative. That's what you're looking for when you look at these routes in terms of stability. And so as long as they exist in this, what we call the left half plane, they're stable. Okay, now let's get into analyzing the properties of these second order routes. Okay. So I'm going to write a generic second order form here. Let's take out lambda 1 and 2. So whenever you have complex conjugate routes like the ones we have, we can write them in terms of these variables, which I'm sure you recognize. from taking our dynamic systems course. So, oh, whoops, I need my imaginary variable over here. So, zeta damping ratio, omega n natural frequency, and omega d is the damped natural frequency. Okay. I want to look at a couple of these things, comparing the short period to the phugoid modes. And what I want to look at first is the damped natural frequency, and this will let you know why we call the short period mode the short period mode. So the units for the frequencies here, they're in radians per second, by the way. But a common unit for frequency is hertz, or cycles per second. So, okay, let's compare. Let's compare our roots. I'm going to bring these numbers back down here. I'm going to copy them, and then I'm going to paste them. Okay, so from right here, this one is the phugoid mode. So let's call it omega d, maybe pH for phugoid. It's 0.06684 radians per second. Now, let's convert this into cycles per second. So there's 2 pi radians in one cycle. And then the radians would cancel and we'd have cycles per second. So we're going to divide this by 2 pi. And I'm going to do that in MATLAB right now. 0.06684. Wait, where am I typing? 4 divided by 2 times pi. So that's 0.01 hertz cycles per second. Let's call this the damped frequency for the phugoid. Now, the period of oscillation is how long it takes to complete one cycle. So for the phugoid, I take 1 divided by that frequency, and it's 94 seconds. Okay, let's go back here. So this is 0.0106 hertz. So that's approximately 1/100th of a cycle per second. So then the period of oscillation for the phugoid is 94 seconds. So I think it was Dilly mentioned earlier, okay, imagine a system receiving an input and then it will oscillate for a while before returning to its original state. If you have a Boeing up in the sky and you hit it with a gust of wind, you're going to excite its short period and phugoid modes, and it's going to take 94 seconds. We'll be able to talk later about like what the phugoid actually looks like and whatever, but the phugoid is kind of in terms of the motion, it's kind of something like this. The aircraft does this. So if you hit a Boeing with a gust of wind, it's kind of going to do a motion like this, and it takes 94 seconds to complete a full cycle. So it's a big, slow, kind of moving mode. Okay, let's do the same thing with the short period. So let's just call it like SP. And I'm going to run out of room, so I'm going to move it over here. It's 0.9039 radians per second. And if I divide that by 2 pi, let's calculate this. 9039. And then, so that's the frequency in hertz. And then, so the damped frequency short period is that. And then the period, how long it takes to complete an oscillation, is 1 divided by that. What is that? 7 seconds. So the period of oscillation of this mode is much shorter. It's 7 seconds compared to close to 100 seconds. Okay, so this was 0.14. Let's just leave it at that. 0.14 hertz. So then the period of oscillation for the short period was 6.95 seconds. And this is where the term short period comes from. Now, another thing Dilly mentioned about stability is that there's a certain amount of time it takes for, if you perturb a system, there's a certain amount of time for it to come back to its original state if it's stable. And a measure of that, so a measure of system speed, actually, I want you to guess. What do you think I'm going to use to measure the system speed for both of these modes? How quickly they return to an original state? Settling time, yes. Oh, that's not a bad idea to do the ratio of the periods. But that's not exactly what I'm talking about here. The settling time. So, the settling time tells us, like, let's say I perturb the Boeing from its original state. Maybe I'll plot maybe the pitch angle here. Actually, to be more precise, it's like a perturbation of the pitch angle. Let's say I have a gust of wind and it kind of pitches the nose up a little bit. You know, it's going to oscillate like this, but it's eventually going to go back. It's going to approach exponentially the original state. And the settling time quantifies how long it takes for this envelope to decay 98% from where it started. So a 98% reduction or whatever. Now, the settling time, we have a definition for it. The 98% settling time. The formula is like this. It's 4 over zeta omega n. And I'm trying to see. So zeta omega n, it's basically the coefficient for the real part of the root. So if you look here, this is zeta omega n for our phugoid, and this is zeta omega n for our short period. So let's do this. Oops. Settling time. Let's do the phugoid first. It's going to be 4 divided by 0.003316. And then we're going to have the settling time of the short period, 4 divided by 0.3709. We will go to MATLAB once again. So the settling time for the phugoid, 4 divided by 0.003316. That is 1,200 seconds to recover from this perturbation. It's going to oscillate once every 90 seconds over a time duration of 1,200 seconds before it recovers. What about the short period? 4 divided by 0.3709. Oh, why did I suppress it? 10 seconds. It's 100 times faster to settle. So this one oscillates faster too. It has one cycle every 7 seconds, I guess. And it basically settles out. Is this independent of perturbation magnitude? Yes. It is. Well, this is a linearized model, so everything is assuming it's in the neighborhood of our reference flight condition. So if it really throws us off our flight path, then it's not valid. But with respect to this model, this is totally independent of the magnitude of the perturbation. A big perturbation, still the same settling time. Okay, so this one, phugoid. The phugoid mode for a Boeing, 1,200 seconds to settle out, whereas the short period takes like 10.8 seconds. So again, it has to be close, but there isn't a hard cutoff, similar to the other. Oh no, this is different. This is, well, it's not exactly different. Okay. Assuming we have this linear model, any perturbation magnitude given to this linear model, you're going to get the same settling time for these different modes. Now, in real life, this model isn't valid if you depart from the reference flight condition. And then in that case, it has to be close, but there isn't a hard cutoff, like you said. So I guess I agree with you. But in terms of the math of this linear model, it's going to be the same for no matter the perturbation magnitude. Okay. Now, okay, so we have the settling time, we have the oscillation frequency. That's right, Tim. We found the oscillation period. So let's go back to this real quick. This is the last thing I'll leave you with today. The complex plane, when you draw the roots, it gives you a good, quick way of interpreting the behavior of a particular set of roots. So the first property that I will show you, the further into the left half plane, so the larger the magnitude of the real part, means faster settling time. So maybe I'll leave, yeah. The further negative you push a root, the faster it's going to settle. So this short period mode, just the fact that it's farther to the left than the fugoid mode, that means it's going to decay faster. And that's what we saw. It decays in like 10 seconds. The fugoid decays in like 1200 seconds because, wow, it's really close to the imaginary axis. So TS is like 10 seconds. Here, settling time is like 1200 seconds. Oh boy. Now, the other property is the frequency of oscillation. And that has to do with the magnitude of the imaginary part. So it has nothing to do with the real part here. So that's omega d. So the higher your root is in the imaginary plane, that indicates faster oscillation frequency, which also means shorter period of oscillation, meaning it takes less time to complete a complete cycle. So that's what we see here. The short period mode, it's taller in the imaginary plane, and so it has a shorter period of oscillation. So it was 7 seconds to complete one period. But then if you look in here for the fugoid, it's not very tall in the imaginary plane, and the period was 96 seconds. So that kind of mathematically gives you a description of these different modes. Do these two modes correlate with two different axes on the vehicle? That's kind of what I wanted to get into next. I don't have the best explanation today, but like the fugoid, wait, do I have a, okay, beginning of next class, I need to show like a video or a picture of this. But my understanding of the fugoid is like if you have the aircraft and it's like flying this way, if you like give it a gust up of wind, it's gonna like go on this path that kind of looks like this. And this is the fugoid. It takes a really long time to happen. And I believe that the aircraft is kind of aligned with this path as it goes. I hope I'm not wrong in saying this, but I'll correct myself next time. But when you imagine the fugoid, it's kind of doing something like that. The short period mode, I have a poorer understanding of. But they do correlate to different quantities in our where do we go? It's not like in terms of axes of the vehicle so much, but they affect these states in different proportions. Like I want to say the fugoid affects this variable more, like the pitch angle. And maybe the short period mode affects like these variables. So we'll check this next time to make sure. But it's like, it's interesting because it's two distinct motions of the aircraft. Are you going to show us death? Oh, yeah. Okay, hold on. I'm going to answer Schrectenwald. Okay, in order to mitigate these modes, do the aircraft's flight surfaces fluctuate, or are there other ways to do this, such as making the amplitude of each mode somehow go to zero? So I think the answer to that is that the flight surfaces fluctuate. So, like when we've all flown in a commercial aircraft, or most of us at some point, and you don't experience these oscillations so much. And that's because there's some kind of active controller. The control surfaces fluctuate a little bit to dampen out these things. Tim, it's not going to be roll. It's not going to be roll. Because this is, remember, this, the short period and the phugoid, the only variables that this model describes are these. Oh, I see. Yeah. So it's roll is going to be part of what we call lateral dynamics, which we might get to on Friday. I don't think so, actually. So short period and phugoid only pertain to this. Different combinations of these variables. What I would love to do is make an animation in MATLAB, but I don't know if I'll have time before Friday. What I'd love to do, this is what I'd love to do. I'd love to bring this drawing into MATLAB and then animate it based on, like, you know, delta U, delta W, delta Q, delta theta, and show how this actually changes the motion. Okay, Tim's saying, for this reference, yeah. You're like, these dynamics that we're talking about, like when people talk about longitudinal flight dynamics, it's corresponding to this specific reference flight condition. If you pick a different reference flight condition, say you're doing a coordinated turn, it's going to bring in a different set of variables when you linearize about that. And you can define a different set of modes that can happen to the aircraft about that reference flight condition. So there's other modes like the Dutch roll, the spiral mode, and these come about for a different reference flight condition, which we call lateral flight dynamics. Okay, we gotta dig up some old Estes death metal. Oh my god, you're not prepared though. I don't think you're prepared for it. See if I can find this. The verdict is in. The scales in the bathroom at the movie theaters measure pound. Wait. Are you sure about that? I think a scale gives you pound fours. No joking? Wait, are you talking about just the scale at the movie theater, or are you talking about like just as like your typical scale? Are you guys turning against me? No, wait. No, 1 kilogram is 2.2 pound force. Wait, is that the same thing as 2.2 pound mass? Now I'm getting confused because of you. Okay, we gotta look at this. Guys, I think it's pound force. What are you talking about? Like the weight of a kilogram is 2.2 pound force. Wait, okay, kilogram to pound mass. Hold on though, come on. I don't want the history. I want the well, never mind. It says pound. Maybe you're a liar. You could be lying to me. I think it's because if I do pound force, watch, it's gonna do this. It's in the first paragraph. A scale that reads mass is actually reading force and converting it to mass, correct? Yes. Because you can't directly sense mass. I think usually there's a strain gauge in there. So it's the force that's bending your strain gauge, and then all right, hold on. Oh, we're gonna find some metal here. Oh my goodness. All right, let's do this one. We got to get the levels right and everything. Oh yeah. I was playing the bass. You guys recognize this song? This is on the bass. This is my brother Nathan. That's me right there. This is just a drum machine though. We didn't have a drummer. Okay, let's play another one. Let's see. I we only have 2 songs, so let's see. I told you guys you weren't ready. I think I saw a meme about Cannibal Corpse. They had a song called My House is Full of Skulls, and one of their players was later found to have multiple Holman's. No, the thing is, I think it was a year or 2 ago, one of the band members of Cannibal Corpse, one of the guitarists, he actually went crazy. And I think he set his house on fire and like attacked somebody with a knife. I don't know. Kind of sad. But yeah, there's... My uncle has a song from 20 years ago, in the beginning is mixed at 30% volume, so you blast your speakers and then become consumed unexpectedly. Yeah. Sinister. Oh, man. I like metal. I really enjoy it. I think it's really fun. All right, people. All right, I gotta head to some office hours. You guys have an excellent Wednesday. I'll see you on Friday. Peace. Goodbye, you guys.